the PowerPoint presentation. I think each of you got a copy. There were really 6 primary points on there. I won't go through them right now because Chris is going to address those. But after that presentation, we really hadn't heard anything, and Jessica and I rattled the cages a little bit, and were able to get a meeting with Deborah Campbell and Mark Matheny and Chris, who surprised us with the extent of their work on each of the issues that we had proposed. And so Jessica and I asked Chris if he wouldn't summarize for us what the city is proposing to do in each of those 6 categories. And Chris, with that, I will turn it over to you.
Definitely. So I'm going to start with just some of the easier ones to address. Are some of the ordinance changes. Staff has been working with our legal department, and we're going to be addressing. My document just shut down. Some definitions directly related to the zoning districts that happen. Right now, we currently have some overlap, which can make enforcement and compliance a lot more difficult. The other things we're looking at is kind of monitoring or adding definitions for certain equipment. We don't know what that change is going to look like, but we need to regulate some things that are occurring that don't fall under any specific category. In addition to those 2, there was a conversation about construction on Saturdays, and this is where we're going to have some noise advisory board input as well as staff input. The city is going to engage with some of our builders to try and get an ongoing conversation, and then we've asked NAB to engage some of the residential groups, and then we can kind of bring NAB and those organizations together to try and discuss if a change for Saturdays is more in residential districts specifically is something that aligns with everybody. Another topic that we discussed was the public survey. We were able to locate the original public survey, and we're going to work with NAB to get that developed and get a new survey out and just see how is the implementation and the effectiveness of the noise ordinance been, and what other areas can we improve on. I believe outside of that, we did discuss vehicular noise, which was continuance. And I think that is more of an ongoing conversation. We're looking at staffing issues and what the best path to correct vehicle.
And I'll just elaborate, if I can, on a couple of those, particularly the vehicular noise. I think most everybody on the board will recall that Jessica and I had developed a letter that we sent to APD that we thought could be an instrument for distribution to the officers who were part of the county city saturation patrols over the weekends. And we really kind of didn't hear much back on that. It turns out that really the APD just doesn't have the capacity, nor are they inclined to pull over or stop motorists from making loud vehicles. They don't have the capacity, and really it's just not something that they're doing anymore. It's a national trend, and APD is very much part of that national trend. However, we do think it's going to be possible to do some signage. It does appear that the sandwich boards that have been effective, and we think in both Knoxville and Greenville, there is an exception in permitting that would allow us to do signage, and I don't think the city has to ask for exceptions from their own permits. So we might be able to put those signs out, and that's part of the continuing conversation. The other thing that we talked about was board members. We had made some proposals. One of our proposals was to add board members in the fields of public health, as well as multifamily. And Jeff, that was something that you had proposed, to add a member in multifamily. And really, Deborah Campbell and Mark and Chris took no exception to the idea that we would populate the board with those members, as long as we didn't feel like we would have to go back for an ordinance change to do that. And it looks like under the categories we have, which have a number of at-large positions, that we may be able to fill that. And Jeff, I think you were going to kind of take the lead and trying to find somebody from multifamily who could join us. And I still think we have an open position on the NAB, so we can rekindle that effort. And then with respect to the public survey, Rick, I know you'll be interested. This is something that the city is hoping to do by end of year, have the questions in place by the end of year for a new year launch. So the public survey initiative is something we've been trying to do for a couple of years, seeing as how the public outreach by the city originally on the noise ordinance generated an enormous amount of interest in this topic. So we think that getting another public survey out will help us as a board to evaluate the effectiveness of the ordinance. But it was an incredibly constructive meeting. We really didn't know what to expect. We had no expectations going in, but we were grateful that Deborah and the city took the time to address each and every one of our concerns. And it certainly is encouraging knowing that we go back every year, that we can really start putting together a power list of those issues that we'll be thinking of, that we think will be coming up in the future. So does anybody have any questions about any of that? Yes, Bruce.
I'm just curious about the downtown traffic noise issue, and I'm assuming so for reference, my house is almost halfway between Biltmore Avenue and McDowell heading into the city. And I swear there's a drag line that goes up, around, and down, because I hear them. Is it like a few individual vehicles that's causing the issue? It's not just like general traffic hum that's the issue that we're talking about?
Yeah, it is indeed. Yeah,
They make me crazy.
I mean, there's a lot of revving, unnecessary engine revving, a lot of modified mufflers,
Right.
Essentially boom boxes on wheels that travel down the downtown streets. And the problem has been felt most acutely by virtue of the number of complaints we get from downtown businesses and residents in that area. No doubt it occurs everywhere, but
it is an issue. In fact, I just pulled up an article. It's an issue everywhere, and there's no, like, police are not gonna do it. The only option that I've seen that makes any sense, but it costs money, is they have noise cameras that can actually, it's like a red light camera. It'll actually snap a picture of a license plate with a dB level. But there are privacy issues with devices like that, and
they've deployed them in Knoxville, and they cost $13,500 a piece.
Yeah, and that doesn't include upkeep.
No, and monitoring and all the rest. And we've discussed
You're unlikely to collect $13,000 a year worth of noise fines.
Probably not. It would take some considerable political will, I think. Jessica?
I was just going to add to that point, Bruce. So, this is one of those examples where we thought this is going to be something that would be somewhat easier to mitigate and deal with because of just the overwhelming frustration from residents to business owners alike. But it's a lot more complicated and nuanced than that. And that's one of the things that Deborah brought up to us the other day, which is important that we acknowledge, is that, one, there's the enforcement issue, right? So we know it's, other than the law enforcement, nobody else can enforce that unless there's something like these expensive cameras. And two, then there's the cause and effect of writing these citations, and then, just implications from like socioeconomic standpoint of where where problems are with vehicular noise, not just in downtown, for instance, but in the housing communities, is something that is of concern, and putting those additional just challenges on already communities that are having other economic disparity. And so Deborah explained it to us the other day of just like, it's not just, oh, let's just put the police on just downtown thing. Cause and part of that too is also just understanding, like, we've been focusing on downtown, but there's also a great number of noise complaints from other places that I guess, that we're not thinking of because we're thinking of the bid. The other part that I will add is like what Reb was talking about, is that as they're trying to figure out what the business, the bid, right, the business improvement district is going to look like, and the bid ambassadors, they're trying to see if there's some way to address that issue with that. They don't know what that looks like, of course, because again, it's not here, it's not happening. But those are some of the other components that we, this is one of those challenges too, Jay, as you're like, I haven't done this before. Like, we're like, oh, this is low hanging fruit, right? Everybody's hates this noise, and it is a health concern. Cars backfire, and it sounds like somebody's getting shot, and it's this whole thing, and but it's proving to be way more complicated. And then the only other thing that I was going to say real quick is just for those of you that had not seen, and yes, Bruce, we will send you the presentation of the PowerPoint. So the other thing that we proposed was changing the hours for Saturday for construction in residential areas, just to start an hour later and end an hour earlier. Right? Because right now, I think it's even on Saturday it's 7 to 7, and we were trying to do 8 to 6 on a Saturday. And so that was, just so you know, that's the other piece, which then now, as Chris was talking about, means bringing in the Builders Association and bringing in the community groups and residential groups and things like that to have conversations around that. Because, as you see some of these complaints that are coming in that are the more construction complaints, is that we have habitual offenders. And this, I have a feeling that that's maybe going to continue to increase, right? So this is one of those things where that dance of that give and the take of like development in the city versus serving the community and residents that currently live here, so just some background on that, on those two things. And
I think the hope there with the conversations they intend on having with the construction industry is to seek some sort of voluntary restraint before they have to take this to council for a legislative change. So remains to be seen how that'll turn out, but they did pledge some energy toward the issue. And the only other thing I would add is under the street noise is that the city is encouraging the NAB to become involved with the community outreach division of the city and trying to develop some form of social media to let individuals know that there is a noise ordinance within the city, that it does involve penalties, and penalties that will escalate over a period of repeat incidents. And we've been puzzling over that one for a while, but Jessica and I did agree that we would try and contact this community outreach department at the city and see what that means. So if any of you are savvy in social media and would like to join that effort, we certainly welcome you to join us. We'll learn more as we go forward. Any other questions on, yeah, Rick?
So related to traffic noise, it had been a while since I'd been downtown to have dinner at one of my favorite restaurants because it's so blessed busy. I could never get a reservation. But last week I ate outside at Posana with friends, and literally every 4 minutes, much to Bruce's thing, the same vehicles would come by and basically make it impossible to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm reinvigorated about that space. Just some thoughts. I'm really not looking for specific action, but just some thoughts around this. One One, there's been a movement because the police is short-staffed. There's been a movement toward civilians taking over non-fatal traffic accident evaluations. I don't know how far down the road that is, but it was in the press again recently, and that apparently is done in other cities. So if you just got a fender bender, a civilian employee can come out and take the facts and the figures and pictures and that kind of stuff. You know, it's where no one's going to be arrested or no one is hurt or anything like that. I wonder if there isn't a possible similar thing here where we don't stop a vehicle, because stepping into the street and all that sort of stuff to stop somebody, that crosses over into that. But what if we had civilians who were properly trained, perhaps paid, with noise meters and cameras, who would testify in court that they pointed the camera at the right vehicle that was making 150 decibels of bullshit, and that was, if not an actual way to get a citation, it would actually be a visible way to make the perpetrators feel like enforcement is going to pick up. So an action that supported the sandwich boards, right? Because if the sandwich board just says we can fine you up to $1,500 a day, but there's no human being doing anything, maybe we won't get anywhere. But before we do any of those things, maybe we should reach out to former complainants about downtown noise, see how many are still here, because I know a handful have sold their condos and moved away because they couldn't stand it. And encourage them to continue to report, so we have some kind of a baseline of frequency, so that if we do a sandwich board or if we do something else, we actually have a reasonable measure of whether anything changes. Because probably at this stage of the game, people are tired of filing reports, right? Because that's just what happens. You know, if people feel like there's no enforcement, well, what's the point of bugging Chris and his team nonstop? So being a data guy, it'd be good if we had some kind of a baseline so that anything we implemented, sandwich boards or anything like that, we could see whether it was making a difference. And we could reach out to the downtown business community to let them know that that's what we're going to be doing, and so they could, you know, either file complaints or give us feedback. And final thought related to Jessica's feedback about the complexity and where there is vehicle noise elsewhere. When you try to do something new, it's often the smartest thing to do is to run a trial where you go do something and see if it works, so as to not discount problems in other neighborhoods. We should just use the social media stuff we're doing and tell back to the city staff, we're going to try this out in location X or location X and Y. And that's not going to stop us from taking it elsewhere if that tryout proves that we can get a decline. So maybe that's a way to not have it all stop, because we can't go into the housing projects. We can't go into the Sears parking lot behind where all my neighbors live and people like to squeal their tires at all times of the day and night, and all the other places. But we go get some data, something that proves it makes a difference. And then we have more momentum to take that elsewhere because we've proven some value. Just as we tackle this and we now have their attention, maybe those ideas will help us get somewhere. That's it for me.
Jay, Bruce had his hand up first. Bruce.
Well, I was just going to add a little. I just did a quick search, but I couldn't come up with it. I do know that the National Park Service conducted a whole noise study for the Blue Ridge Parkway for motorcycle noise. Basically, Harleys with a big rumble. They did a whole study, I don't think there was any. I have to try to find the study. I knew some people who worked on that. I don't think there was any recommendations. I think it was more the Park Service is interested in determining what the existing environment is. I think that's all they did, because when people, and this goes back to you, Rick, also, when people have vehicles that make noises like I hear going downtown, there's a lot of money and energy and effort spent in getting the vehicle to that state, and they have every intention of making that noise rumbling through town. I mean, that's the point. The point is for you to have to stop and look at the car while you're eating dinner. There's sandwich boards and whatever, even fines probably. I mean, it's not cheap making your car sound like that. So I just want to inject, reasonable caution that this might be a really untractable problem. That's all.
Thank you. Jay?
Mine's mostly a question. I know that back in the day, there used to be a lot of cruising on Patton Avenue. And that there was a lot of noise, and I don't see that as much as I used to back, 10, 15 years ago. I was wondering if there was any historical research within the city as to what might have alleviated that or caused a lessening. My intuition tells me that most of this is actually cultural, like implying what Bruce was just saying, that these are people who want to do this, just like people used to go to cruise on Patton Avenue and park their cars in front of the Save More and show off all their engines and stuff. It used to be a big thing in town. I was just curious if there was anything that from that experience that could inform this decision in any way.
What were the years?
Oh gosh, I mean, I remember it as recently as the 2000s. It used to be a real big thing. You would go down the Patton Avenue on a Friday or Saturday night, and it would just be it'd be a racetrack, and it would be cars just rumbling up and down the street. And one of the things, if I remember right, and Jess and Jeff, if you guys have any knowledge, help me here, but I think one of the things they did was implement like a no cruising ordinance. I'm guessing here, but basically you couldn't lap 3, 4, 5 times. That would be the definition of cruising. I don't have any idea how you would enforce something like that downtown without, law enforcement involvement, but that was a solution that was implemented. And I'm curious whether we have any knowledge about, how that worked out, what the results were, because it doesn't, if you go down there on a Friday or Saturday night now, it's not happening like it used to.
I would just add, I don't think have any knowledge about that phenomenon, but we would be grateful if you would check it out, see what you can find on what may have caused that phenomenon to discontinue.
My guess is, like I said, is that it just kind of fell out of favor, which is what I mean when I imply cultural. It just became not the thing to do anymore. But I'm wondering if there's some sort of historical civic context. I would have to, as you implied, I would have to do some research. And I don't know if anyone else here has that memory or any knowledge of that area.
Chris, anything within the city operations that would have caused that, you think?
Not off the top of my head, but I could look into that and see if there was something.
Okay. Jeff?
I feel like I do have some recollection of something going into play, Jay, but I can't remember specifically about it. There is still some gathering that happens. I don't think the vehicles are doing full cruising laps like before, but I know at the bowling alley in West Asheville, there are definitely some vehicles that are still gathering there, and then kind of pulling out of that place. I'm not sure how often they cruise a circle down that side of Patton Avenue, but it still happens to a degree, but not to the degree that it used to 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Oh, sorry, that's not the one.
Hey, Rick, to your point, when I met with Dorn, the thing I told him that they could be most useful at doing is complaining, is actually registering their complaints with APD or the app. And they said that they would disseminate that information into their group. And then Bruce, Jessica and I had a phone conversation with Lieutenant Mike McClanahan, who was the individual in APD we were working with on trying to find some solutions to the downtown engine revving. And anecdotally, he said, well, the funny thing is, if an officer cites those individuals who have souped up their cars and are making noise for attention, it just incites them to worse behavior.
Yeah, it's an attention. It's absolutely an attention grabbing thing you do, and if you grab attention, like all attention is good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anything else on Chris's presentation or the? I think Jay has just posted an article on what happened to the Patton Avenue. I encourage everybody to read that. We can put that on the agenda next time. Any other discussion today?
People got old is basically what it says.
Is that what it says? They got old?
I mean, it just says, I mean, again, because I've lived, I live in Emma, area, and I have for over 20 years. So I remember it's always been a thing. It was a thing for many, many years. But there's like some, it talks about a change in climate or like that era's over, but it just also says something to the something to the effect of like most of those people that cruise were now in their 30s and 40s, and it's just not something that they have the time for.
They have kids.
Yeah, no, I mean, it honestly sounds like that. It sounds like it's this
They aged out.
They aged out, that and the price of gas going up. So.
It also implies that it took police enforcement to cause it to end.
Yeah, it does say that too, because I actually do remember there being more of a police presence, because if you were trying to turn left, if you were in a turn lane on Patton Avenue, it was a nightmare to deal with. So I do remember there being some enforcement around it, but yeah.
Any other discussion? All right. Ashley, have we got anyone on the line?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to give callers a chance to speak. If there are any, there have been some technical issues where it's showing the affordable housing video stream, but it's doing the closed captioning for our meeting on the public input, but YouTube is streaming the correct video and meeting. So if there are any callers online, hit *3 to enter the speaker queue, and I can let you in to speak. Hold on, I'm just giving everybody a minute in case they're trying to queue in. Okay, we do have a caller. Caller, you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and then that will be it.
Ashley, if there's a speaker on there, very faint.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to correct that. I think we're just having technical issues. It's not letting them come through.
Okay.
I'm going to shut it down.
So no public comment today.
Not that I can get to come up. It's just an issue with the system today. That's not, IT wasn't able to figure out what's going on with it either.
Well, those of you who are out there and can hear us, we hope you'll rejoin us at the September 9th meeting where perhaps we'll have the technical issues resolved. If there are no objections, then we will adjourn the meeting. Any objections? Have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? No roll call.
Aye.
Adjourn. All right. Thank you, everybody. See you September 9th.
It's great to meet
Thank-
everyone, and I'm excited to
Welcome.
be part of this.
Glad you're here.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Bye.